a question is, why do we still have this 20 by 20 post and beam house from 1775? It is not typical of an 18th century house, 18th century, 1700s. An 18th century house typically would be in town somewhere. It would be more substantial than this. It would be lived in for centuries. It would have been modernized. I can't do much about the sun, guys. I'm sorry. We'll have to reverse our course a little bit. But who's going to preserve this house? You can understand a house that's been lived in and modernized and so forth. The answer to that is the descendants of John and Lydia Neilson. They had 8 children at one point. They vacated the house during the period that the armies were in contention here, and they brought their belongings and took refuge in Albany while the armies were fighting here. This became the American camp. 8,500 soldiers on September 12th. You see these blue topped stakes. They represent a defensive wall built around the camp here. That would have been tree trunks laid horizontally, perhaps in a zigzag pattern, 5 or 6 feet high. 8,500 soldiers with axes, with an enemy not far away, was sufficient motivation to get that wall put up. 2.5 miles worth of it. When you get up to the top of the hill, you'll see that that wall actually goes to the east for a substantial amount and encircles this entire area. The house was vacant. The army is up here. It's getting organized, and 2 generals commandeer the house for their headquarters. One of them is Benedict Arnold. He was second in command here. Another with Arnold was one of his subordinate generals, Enoch Poor. And for many years, this was called Poor's headquarters, not Arnold's headquarters. Arnold was the major general. Poor was only a brigadier general, 1 level down, because nobody wanted to credit Arnold with anything good, because he had turned traitor. But not here. Here he was devoted to the cause and an effective and brilliant field general, and played a decisive role in the battles here, as we'll see. So it was Arnold's headquarters, no doubt about that. Even though earlier designations were as Poor's headquarters. Okay, we're talking about the house. The Neilsons had 8 children, and that means they had a lot of descendants to pass the property down to. The Neilsons chose the correct side, the winning side in the battle, so they got their farm back. It was a mess. At one point there were 13,000 American troops here in this camp, but they were enterprising young people. They did well. They expanded their holdings, and they passed the farm down to their descendants, who kept it as a working farm until 1926. In 1926, the state of New York comes by and buys the private farms that comprised the battlefield and created the first historical park around the battles of Saratoga. Up until that time, it was all privately owned, privately farmed. Now here we have a picture of the Neilson farm in about 1925, before the state takes it over. I know that you probably can't see a lot of the detail, but here is the modern 1925 residence, and here is a barn, part of the farming operation, and right here is our little house. And it's been incorporated into this barn, not as a residence, but perhaps as a shop or a storeroom or some useful thing to the farming operation. The Neilsons knew its history, and a building that is being used for constructive purposes is going to be repaired if something goes wrong. If glass breaks, you replace the glass. If a floorboard breaks, you replace that. And they're responsible for sustaining and preserving this building for 249 years now. I have some pictures. I'll pass this around. The pictures show the house as it's attached to the barn, as it is here. Once the state took it over, they got rid of the barn, they got rid of the modern house, and they put up some structures that didn't belong here. They put up a blockhouse, a pavilion down where the road is, and a number of other structures up here on the hill to promote the battlefield as an historical object. And they moved the house down to this area here behind the monument there, the granite monument. I'll pass this around. You can take a look. You can see the politicians gathering around the structure, taking credit for all of the wonderful things that the politicians like to take credit for. This is in 1926.
The blockhouse, that's the blockhouse along the Hudson River?
Yes, yes. That blockhouse is now in Stillwater. Thank you, Mike. I'll send around some other pictures. These are postcard pictures of the house moved in this location, painted white, no porch. And here are some of the other structures that they put up here. All of those structures had no, except for the Neilson house, had no relation to the battles at all. It was done without a great deal of historical research. Questions at this point?
I guess the blockhouse, so that's just a modern reconstruction blockhouse?
Yeah.
It didn't exist in Stillwater in the 1770s?
It didn't exist there, and it didn't exist here. It was 1920s construction. Yes, sir.
There was also a powder house
Yes.
that was down here. Was that have any originality for that period?
It has no relevance to the battles. I'm not sure exactly when that was put up.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably put up at about the same time, a magazine, if you will, for storing powder, but it was not relevant historically to the battles of Saratoga. Let's take a look at the house. You will see it set up as a military headquarters. All of the furnishings in the house are replica. The house is not. The house is 30–40% original, again with the restoration work done by the Neilson descendants.
Key with you, right?
You, sir?
Do you have the key with you?
I do not have the key.
And nobody's shown up on the
Nothing much happens under the National Park Service until 1950s. In the 1950s, they do archaeological work to determine where that defensive wall was, and if you look carefully, you can see it goes all the way out to the Hudson River. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And they do further archaeological work to determine the location of the house in 1777, which is right here. And then they take down all of those buildings that the state put up and leave the hill as we see it today, with the exception of my tree over